the EOC. I'll take that first question.
Yeah.
That first question, can our governor keep our state shut down like this even if the president opens the country back up? That's not an easy question to answer. If you've been watching the news, the president says he has the power. The governors are saying he doesn't. It's the governors that have so far put most of the restrictions on their residents. And so assuming that they have the power to open the states without the president's input. If you look at the 10th Amendment, which gives all the powers to the state except those expressly reserved for the government, the federal government has the right to handle standing army, do treaties, immigration law. There's some things that are expressly the federal government. If it's not, then those powers go to the state. And since that amendment was enacted in 1791, it's probably been litigated the most out of all the amendments because it's ambiguous, it's gray. And sometimes we have to have the Supreme Court decide who has the power in a particular case, like sanctuary cities. The president said he had a right to withhold federal funds if you're a sanctuary city, and the state said, no, you don't. So that's why we have the three branches of the government for checks and balances. And a lot of times it's the U.S. Supreme Court who decides who's right and who's wrong. So I don't have, a specific answer whether the governor has all the power to do that or whether the president does, but I would just say I hope they work together because there's plenty of work for both of them to do to open our states back up. But I'll just add this. This decision that the president's going to make is probably the most important one, any decision any president can make, except maybe declare war. And I think, it's going to make a break. It's going to be a 50-50 chance whether he opens too soon or opens too late. If he opens it and it kind of turns out to be it's too soon and we have another outbreak, I would suspect this is his last term. That's my opinion based on how important I think this decision is to open the states back up and how they open them. They do it in phases, all at one time, who gets to open first, and then is it successful? Does it save the economy, put people back to work and all the things that we want to do, such as go back to a normal life? That's the best answer I can give to that, which is not specific, who has the power.
Craig, the question number 6 on this list.
Yes.
And it's one I've actually had a lot of people ask me about. Because anytime you talk about these kind of situations where the government's involved in setting guidelines for what we can and we can't do, and the military is mentioned, people get uncomfortable. So the question we were asked is, can you please explain the need for the National Guard presence or in the possibly inevitable martial law in a state during a medical pandemic?
Okay. So the National Guard, it works for the governor. It's the old militia system which has laws in place that allow citizen soldiers to augment the civil authorities if they're needed by the governor. They're under a separate law and they can do different functions than the active duty army can do. And a lot of that stems from the old British Army just taking over a house, setting up shop. A lot of the people were upset with that. So there is provision in the law that the federal government cannot come in and take your house and set up, headquarters or house soldiers. So they set up the militias, and they have special authority to what's called posse comitatus, which is Latin for they augment the civil authorities, and and we take an oath. The National Guard takes an oath to support the president and the governor. So they're under a separate title, and if they get activated to go to war, they have to be released by the governor. So you've seen in the instances where the Southwest border happened and the governor said, we're not going to let our National Guard soldiers, they had that authority because they have to look out for the welfare of their state because they have National Guard members there who do a federal mission, but they also do a state mission. We support the civil authorities, we support any incident that happens in the state to provide support at the local level. So we work with the counties, they have EOCs, we work directly with the Maine Emergency Management Agency. We're part of the Maine Emergency Management Agency, and that's headed up by the Adjutant General, who is the Commissioner of the Department of Veterans and Emergency Management. So he's in charge of the emergency management that the state keeps open 24/7. Now it's full capacity and the National Guard is also manning 24/7 to provide support because the President and the Governor have declared a civil emergency. We have no authority to do anything, the military, unless the President or the Governor enacts that part of the law to say that there is an emergency and that certain powers and certain things can be suspended. But they have to spell it out in writing. Can't be just, as some people don't like to say, willy-nilly. It has to be spelled out specifically and what the reason is for. It just can't be because I want to. And there are powers in place if the governor or the president oversteps their bounds in the civil emergency, then the Congress or the legislature can vote to say, oh, you're done. Your emergency is done, your declaration is null and void. So there are checks and balances, but those powers are put into the state constitution and the US Constitution to give power to the executive branch in a time of emergency.
I think in watching the news, some military has been dispersed in various areas of the countries. To what purpose? Are you aware of any of the particulars?
So, first of all, they won't be activated unless there's a declared state emergency, and then the governor has to call them up. And then if the National Guard can't support it, then the National Guard Bureau would contact the active duty army to say, what do you have for assets to support us? So it's always at the grassroots level. As each step of the way, if it cannot be handled, then the next level will ask for assistance. The military doesn't just come in and take over.
Right. But now, at this point, those that have been sent to various areas, are they doing police assistance, or are they working in medical, or what? Are they doing?
So they've called up a lot of medical people to help assist and to be ready to assist the current system of doctors and nurses and PAs in case they get overwhelmed. And they position some certain places. They've also helped logistics-wise to go cut through all the red tape to get the masks, ventilators, all kinds of supplies to set up temporary hospitals. And so the president used his War Powers Act to kind of cut out the middleman and have the military move the equipment. So you're not putting out to bid, contract taking 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, the minimum time. All the things that are in place, normal business, he suspended those because this is an emergency to prepare. Some National Guard are going with police officers to check door to door. Some are, again, medical, some mostly are logistics, moving equipment around from the CDC.
So for those people who have a tendency to be jittery about these things,
Sure.
we're not looking at a martial law situation as things stand now. Well, that'll be a comfort to some people, I'm sure. One of the questions, Joe, actually a couple here. One, do you have the latest numbers on total positive COVID-19 cases, deaths and so forth within the state?
As of today at 11:45, there are 796 confirmed cases. That means a positive test. As of today, we've got 333 that have recovered. We still have 130 hospitalized, and then we have 27 deaths. As I said earlier, the greater the population, the higher the numbers. If you go to Cumberland County, they have the most confirmed cases, they have the most deaths, they have the most recovered. And as you go north, I think there is still one county that has 0, I think one. Piscataquis. So you can go on the main CDC website and they post that, and of course they have a news conference every day with, sometimes with the governor and then sometimes with just the doctor, I can't remember his name at the moment. And he gives out those numbers and what they're seeing in Maine.
Okay, the one right above that on your list, do you know if there are any plans by the council on what to do if the president gives the go-ahead to reopen?
Well, the council is going to take probably its lead from the governor. And the way that the charter is written, I think the city attorney's position is that the council doesn't have the legal authority to close businesses down under an emergency declaration. So they're going to take the governor's lead, and as the governor, clearly the governor does, and as the governor puts into place her plan to start opening businesses and then phases and which businesses, whichever of those fall in the city of Waterville, is that the council will simply follow suit.
So there's nothing other than wait and see what the governor's going to say at this point?
Right, because the council, we update the council every day on EOC actions and what the departments are doing, any news that we hear directly from the CDC or FEMA, so that they're kept abreast of what's going on, what we're doing, what our resources are. But as far as opening goes, I think the city council and the mayor are simply waiting to see what action the governor's going to take.
So how has the reaction been? And I'd like to hear from both of you. How has the reaction been where you're working among your fellow coworkers and the location area? And how good have they been about observing, for example, the distance? And how do you handle that when, especially in your both of your cases, where you have lots of people coming and going just by virtue of what you do?
Well, there are some exemptions from the social distancing, and that is for healthcare workers, first responders, and even some folks that work construction, because construction is considered essential infrastructure. So if you get down Main Street in Waterville, you'll see that the Colby Hotel is still under construction. Well, sometimes it may take 2 men to lift a 200-pound object, which is only 2 feet long. You obviously can't have 6 feet between you. That exemption comes in there. We, as law enforcement within the station, and we've got the station closed down to the public, very limited access. We're only making serious arrests or serious charges. We mitigate to the extent we can, contacting people or going within that 6-foot social distancing requirement. So we need to practice, what we preach. I'm a strong advocate that, this is a very contagious disease and it's passed on from person to person. Mostly, you can get it off on surfaces. And everyone has to do their part. And I know it's painful, but social distancing and sheltering in place is really here what's going to make the difference, in my opinion. I know there's frustration. I know there's frustration about being sheltered in place and not being able to enjoy yourself and go out to the beach and go to those places. But we got to think of the greater good here. And I would rather suffer a little bit longer now and have our summers open.
How about you, Craig?
So I know we still have to run business as usual. We've limited some of the things that we do. We only have a few people in the office. The rest of us rotate in. We work from home, telework. We check in every day with everyone electronically, whether it's by cell phone or email or a phone bridge, to talk to everybody to see what's going on. So with this COVID-19, we have a responsibility to report what we're doing to support it. And so weekly, we have to update our boss, and our boss has to update the adjutant general on what we're doing to support it. So there are provisions and laws for our workers, can and can't work so many hours, work certain functions. In the case of emergency, they can for so many days, and then you have to ask for a waiver. And there's a lot of laws, a lot of lawyer involved in the process, but it is also to protect the employees. They are citizens, but they're expected to get the call. We are considered essential, and we've had debates within our department what's essential. But at a moment's notice, if something were to outbreak and the governor calls us up, we have plans in place on what to do. Things are already pre-positioned. And I know there's been discussions and people have asked me over the years, well, I saw this unit doing this exercise and this unit doing this exercise. Well, they do those exercises to prepare for things like this. There are contingencies in place that they have to support the governor in the state government within the state. And there's a reason why units are spread out all over the state for that purpose. They're put out there for a very specific reason, dispersed not only for population-wise, but also to support the state in the case of emergency, whether it's the ice storm, whether it's flooding, or whether now it's this pandemic. As Chief Joe said, this is new. We've never really planned for this. We've done parts of what been asked of us to do, but not totally, because it also impacts our families. Usually, we have worked many long hours, but our families are also going through as well, and you have to have a plan in place for your family, and I think everybody's trying to figure out what's that plan now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Joe and I had a conversation probably about a week ago as far as what we can't do on this stay-at-home policy. And because I have a relative, close family relative who lived with us and now has his own place, but in half the time he's with us and half the time he's at his own place. And we're trying to find out, can anybody come to our house, and still not be violating? What do you know? If is there any flexibility in that?
Well, there is some flexibility in it, and each order that was given by the governor, it's not black and white. There's some ambiguity to these orders, and a lot of times we have to get an opinion from the Attorney General's office. Just going back to the hotel that being built, when we got a complaint that there were 40 workers down there and they were violating social distancing and the number of people allowed in a group, we looked at the order and that's what it said. And it said, essential infrastructure. Well, is a hotel under construction essential infrastructure? We said, no. What is that hotel doing to mitigate the coronavirus or help? And we said no. But we called the Attorney General's office. This is a building being built like Foley College. And the Attorney General's office said, yes, that's essential infrastructure. So we said, okay. So there is a lot of times when we get a complaint on folks that we need to call the Attorney General's office. One was landscaping. Is that an essential home and maintenance need that you have? And again, we thought that, some of it's not, we could read the governor's office audits, and we said, no, planting flowers is not essential home maintenance. And we called the AG's office and they said, yeah, sure. Landscapers can do that. It's their living. I said, okay. So again, there are some things that are black and white. The social distancing, the 6 foot requirement, under 10. You cannot leave your home to go socialize. It's got to be for going to the groceries, pharmacy, child care. you know, you're gonna care for another family member. There are quite a few exceptions there, but what they're trying to stop is leaving your home simply to go socialize someplace and then, you know, have that extra exposure out there. So there are limited reasons why you can leave your home.
Okay, what about out on the lawn? Let's say you've got 4 or 5 people in the neighborhood that, you know, instead of standing at the end of the driveways and talking, they set up chairs on one lawn and stay 6 feet apart. Is that?
Those are a lot of the gray areas that we have to use common sense on. As far as enforcement, we have not charged anyone with a violation of the governor's executive order. It's a Class E misdemeanor, so it's an arrestable offense. But we're using warnings and education. And so we don't want to, you know, end up with an otherwise law-abiding citizen all their life ending up with a charge because of this pandemic that they're trying to deal with. So we use warnings and education, unless it's blatant or they're resistant after a few warnings, then we might determine the charge. But in that particular case, we would go by, and if you were not violating the 6-foot distance or exceeding a group of 10, we would probably drive right by you.
Good. One more that I actually discussed with you was this going out for drives. And there was, because I know when she first gave the order, it was like, no way. You know, you go out just to go to the grocery store. And then at one of her television appearances where she was giving more information, she actually suggested, basically, it sounded like to avoid cabin fever, go out and take a drive. So can we count that as a legal ability to, like, maybe if we need some groceries, drive to Rockland and get groceries and come back?
Well, she certainly took us all by surprise when she said that, at least us in law enforcement, and we said, she just made it much more difficult to enforce that. So we're not going to. And if you do drive someplace, you gotta remember that if you have a passenger, it has to be an immediate family. I'd have to double check whether it can be a relative, but you just can't have a friend or, you know, a casual acquaintance in your car.
So my nephew and his girlfriend coming over to watch television together at our house, so they could be supervised, would not come under those guidelines as being okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
And you know, we're being asked a lot, so if you see someone driving down the road, how do you know that they're going out for a legitimate purpose? And do you stop them? Well, number one, we don't know, and number two, no, we're not stopping them unless we have some information. And believe me, people are turning in their neighbors by the droves.
Seriously?
My neighbor's doing this, my neighbor's doing that. I drove by this address and they're doing this, and I don't understand why they're violating it and you're not doing anything. And again, people are under enough stress.
Yeah.
And it could get a lot worse. And having the police, you know, charge you with a violation of the governor's executive order is the last thing that we want to do. And so we're doing everything we can, again, to warn and to educate, get voluntary compliance. We don't want to charge you. I mean, there's enough to deal with without having a charge hanging over your head. But people also have to realize that, you know, the authority is there, and, you know, there's a reason for it. And as I said, I think that the social distancing and keeping small groups is helpful. So I ask everyone to comply with it.
Okay. Craig, your situation is a little bit different than Joe's, because there's no way Joe can work at home and do what he does.
Right.
But you, on the other hand, you're in your office sometimes and then you're home.
Correct.
How have you learned to basically juggle the change in your household and everybody stay sane, and have you come up with any ideas or ways with which you can deal with that and still keep everybody in as good a humor as possible?
Well, I try to keep the same schedule. I have a office that's just dedicated, that's my office. So when I'm there, I'm working, try to keep it separate from, then when I come down to get coffee, no different than me going to get coffee where I work. It just happens to be in my own home. Pour another cup of coffee, drink some coffee, use my own bathroom. The only part that's more difficult is, work-wise, is the interaction that my office has with each other has been a little strained, because to get things done, it takes a little bit longer. So an email or a text isn't quite the same as, hey, this situation's going on, how do we do this, and what are you going to do? And because it takes, usually for what we do, there's a lot more people involved in just one. If we're hiring somebody, it's not just one person that's doing the hiring. There's different aspects of it.
Well, have you come up with ways within your family to keep each other in good humors and such, or?
Well, we still keep our normal time of dinner, same routine. We also got a new puppy just before this happened, so it's obviously made us it's distracted us in training him and taking walks with him, because they still say that's essential. He needs the exercise. So do we. We try to do things together. We talk about things. We talk about, I pose the question, and I pose to people out there, what do you think is going to change? What do you think is going to change society? Will it change society, or will it go back to the way it was? Are you going to wash your hands more? Are you going to be more cognizant where you go? Are you going to stock up on food and other supplies that you may be running low on, because you're realizing that it doesn't take much for our supply system to slow down, and the things that we normally get and how we do things from day to day has been interrupted, and there's been new ways we've had to go about doing it. Are you going to purchase things differently now? Are you going to read labels? Are you going to, I was amazed before this, even at work or in public places I'd go, and I'd see some people wouldn't even wash their hands after they went and used the restroom. And I was trained that with a lot of people together, you need to wash your hands often. You're in contact with people and things pass through quickly, especially with people from different areas that they're not used to what you've been exposed to. It just highlights this is what's going on now. And I think that's the purpose of the social distancing, is limit to who you normally hang out with, because you're all been exposed to the same thing. When you start hanging out with different people, now you're taking on what they've been exposed to, who they've been exposed to.
That's a good point. One of the questions here, and this is for either one of you, if you happen to have the information, has there given any general idea or projected date when they think that this is going to peak in Maine?
That's a tough question to answer, because if you look at the numbers don't tell the whole story. I mean, we've all heard that you can be asymptomatic and you can actually have coronavirus and spread it, and you don't even know that you have it. So when you look at those numbers, how accurate are they? How about the people that have been tested but haven't not got the test results back? How about the people that are sick and they're not going to get tested at all, and they're weathering the storm at home? So, we listen closely to, what the governor says and what the president says, because it really should be driven by scientific data to make that decision. However, if you listen to both, officials at the state level and the governor and the president and his task force on coronavirus, it seems like within a couple of weeks, that, some are even saying now that it's peaking, but To actually say, next week for certain, I don't know. But I think based on what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, the data that they're sharing with us, that maybe in the next week to 10 days, we'll see that peak happen. And they're saying in some places in the country, it has peaked, those with very low populations.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the benefits that we have about living in Maine is
Right.
the distancing. I put a little post on Facebook not too long ago and was surprised at the chuckling reactions I got when they said the 6 foot distancing. I said, here in Maine, people say keep 6 foot apart from one another. Why so close? We're not used to that here. So I think it's important. One question that I had here, it said, what's the balance between having faith that this is all going to end quickly and also preparing for all of this to be drawn out longer than we expect? So it's a good question, but it's the same answer that I would give for this as for those of us who are waiting for the return of the Lord Jesus Christ. We know He's coming back, just like we know there's going to be an end to this particular pandemic. We don't know when, but we have confidence that it's going to happen. But the Bible tells us, and I think it applies to natural things as well. He said, you know that I'm going to be returning. Occupy till I come. You know the pandemic is going to come to an end. Occupy till it ends. And what do I mean by that? I mean, put your hand to the normal, everyday tasks that you can do if there were no pandemic going on in your area, in your neighborhood. Sure, you're going to have to make adjustments as to, what you can do socially, but the day-to-day activities like Craig was speaking about at his house, you try and maintain some sense of normalcy. You still have telephones. You still have texting. You have FaceTiming and Zoom, where you can get a bunch of people together and share and whatever. I know my wife has morning prayer on Tuesdays and on Thursdays with different groups of people, and they all go on Zoom, and so they see one another as a group. They're able to talk to one another. They're able to share scripture. They're able to pray about the things that God's laid on their heart. Well, the same thing applies to visiting family or visiting with friends. Do something that's going to keep you active. You don't have an excuse not to have time to improve your skills or develop a hobby or a talent. We have time, and we have a requirement to stay where we are. But know this, regardless of what the situation is, the Bible says, in this world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I've overcome the world. God knew about this from the very beginning, from before the foundation of the earth. He knew about us, that we were all in His heart and in His mind. He knew what we'd be going through. And so He has plans in the Spirit as well. And He said, stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ has made you free, and be not entangled again in a yoke of bondage. Fear is bondage, and it tangles you up, it ties you up, it immobilizes you. But the Word of God and confidence in God to take care of you is a liberating thing. It frees you from the bondage of the enemy and frees you from the bondage of fear. The Bible says perfect love casts out fear. So whatever you do, operate in love. Think about your neighbors maybe that are having a difficult time, and try and find some way to encourage them or to reach out and touch them without violating, of course, these current limits that we have on social interaction. But just know that the Lord is moving on your behalf. As I was praying today, I had to go somewhere, so I took a ride out and went looking for a place where I could just sit with my thoughts, not be disturbed, not violate any tight situations with people. And the Spirit of the Lord seemed to speak this to me. I was actually sitting in a parking place. I was overlooking a river, a bend in a river, and watching the water flow by. And unrestricted, oblivious to the pandemic, doing what it always does, flowing past the same places, just on a journey. And the Lord spoke to me and he said, the church people are like a river. The river's designed to flow to the sea. No obstacles can stop its natural flow forever. No matter what happens or what tries to, you gotta excuse my handwriting, I'm a lefty, or what tries to restrict its flow, eventually water flows either over, under, around, or through its obstacle and proceeds to its goal, which is the sea. This is as simple as you can express it. We're here on this earth for a purpose. And the body of Christ is here to love God, to know God, to serve God, to love your neighbor as yourself, and to help people who are in distress. That purpose isn't going to change because of this pandemic. And nothing can restrict the gospel nor God's love from reaching people. God always has found a way to overcome even nations that have tried to restrict it in an ungodly manner. Not because of a pandemic, but strictly for hatred of a religion. Our government's doing its very, very best to keep us safe and to keep us healthy. You say, well, what about protesting? You can protest from your home. What do I think about groups getting together and storming the governor's house and demanding to be liberated to go out and have social interaction again because they're tired of being home? Well, I know we have free speech, and according to what I've seen so far, government officials, law enforcement have been as patient as they possibly can be in those situations. But you know, to what good purpose? What happens if there are a group of people who are there who are infected? Maybe there's in that period that it hasn't manifested itself fully in their bodies, but it's manifested itself enough to spread it around. My Bible says that people are given authority over us, government officials, for our good and for our benefit. And we're to honor them. Now, if they tried to tell us that we couldn't be Christians anymore, if they tried to tell us that we don't have the right to read the Bible anymore, things of those types, which governments have tried to do in the past, then you have a moral right to resist. But that's not what this is about. I know some people would like to spin that to their favor and say, yes, this is a great conspiracy, and they're trying to rid the nation of religion. That's not so. There's no real strong indication that that's so. We're still being allowed to broadcast church services and programs like this. We're still being allowed to read our Bibles and express ourselves on social media, whether it be YouTube, Facebook, and I don't know however many there are out there. If I were 18, I could probably give you 12 or 13 more that I don't know about. But if they're concerned for your well-being, and God's concerned for your well-being, then obedience is better than sacrifice, the word says. Don't sacrifice your body for the simple purpose of making them open up Walmart and Target to a larger group of people so you don't have to stand in line or stand 6 feet from someone. My wife and I have friends who have contracted the virus, and one quite seriously ended up in intensive care. We prayed a great deal for that person. We had people all over the country praying for them. They're ministers of the gospel. And we were updated regularly, and what this person went through was a horrible thing, even to the point of starting to have her organs fail. On respirator, all types of medication, was put in an induced coma And I'm actually thankful for that, because she's not aware of the struggles as much that were going on in her body. She's since started to come around. She's out of intensive care now, and they're trying to rehabilitate her and get her back to the semblance of normal lifestyle and health again. But just going through that made me realize what in the natural, what it stores, even at my job, is worth losing life, especially in that manner. Stop thinking that the world, the flesh, and the devil are all at work from DC or from the Democratic Party or the Republican Party or the Illuminati or the deep state, the shallow state. Think about human lives. Think about the message of the gospel. Think about your prayer life. Trust God, love people, and honor the authorities over you. You're going to see this thing go by much quicker. The Bible says love conquers the multitude of sins, and it also conquers the enemy's efforts to destroy us. But we shouldn't destroy ourselves from the inside out. So that's my advice to you. Love God, honor authority, and walk in peace and in trust that God has your back. This is Pastor Dave Rogers, along with Craig Bailey and Chief Joe Massey, Waterville Police Department. Thank you for watching with us, and you have a blessed night. Do we have a question? Oh, excuse me.
Do you have the latest info guidelines from today's press conference?
From this press conference?
Today's.
Oh, from today's press conference? I don't. I didn't see anything there that was of any significance. It changed. The numbers went up. The good thing is the hospitals are not maxed out at this time, which is good for all of us. As you know, both Inland and Thayer hospitals set out some outside tents to screen people for us. And we're really concerned that we're going to overwhelm our local healthcare system, but that has not happened. So sometimes I think the constant updates are redundant and get to you and add to some of the confusion about what and when things are going to happen. But we do need to keep abreast, obviously, of what's going on at the local and state and federal level. So kind of imperative. Matter of fact, when we're at the EOC, that we have the news on all the time. In the event there's, an emergency message from the governor or the president, we know what's going on.
Excellent. Craig, is there anything you'd like to add?
So I know when they do daily briefings they have the CDC briefings, they've got about 1,000 hospital beds within the state available right now. And that's not including setting up temporary hospital in different locations that they have planned in case the pandemic gets worse. So there are plans in place, there is equipment available. The news about the shortage of this and that, it's not all that it's caught up to be. And I know, if you really want more up-to-date information, you can go onto maine.gov in the Maine Emergency Management, Maine Preparedness, and you can get each written declaration that the governor has sent out.
Yeah, and I've done that, and it's been quite helpful at this point.
And the last update was at 2:45 p.m. today, and she made 3 different changes today about not evicting people, banks and credit unions working home businesses so they don't foreclose, and helping with one-time $500 payments for rental assistance. So, it's working with the local community, with banks, credit unions, and, to help Mainers get through this situation.
Thank you very much. That was helpful. Well, God bless you. We appreciate you watching. We're going to be broadcasting again Sunday morning service, 10 a.m. We are now on YouTube and Facebook, and we're just going to continue to do that from now until the Lord comes back. Keep us in your prayers that as we add newer technology, we've been upgrading our equipment, and so hopefully things are getting better, and pretty soon we'll have this about as flawless as you can get live broadcasting over YouTube and Facebook. So keep us in prayer on that. If you would like to donate, or if you have tithes and offerings for the church, if you go back to our homepage at mainchurch.org, on the front page there'll be a word down below that says donate on the right hand side. Just click that and it'll take you through the process. If you want offering envelopes mailed to you because you're a check only person, write your comment on Facebook or send us an email at admin at mainchurch.org. Admin at mainchurch.org. Request your offering envelopes and we'll send them out. And if you're just stopping by, you caught us, and you just want to bless us, if you're not a member and you're just a visitor, we'll still accept your offerings. We love you. God bless you and have a great night.